Now, there's still a significant number of sales managers that are very much against facial hair for salespeople. And even though your boss is no longer allowed to tell you to go home and shave, as a salesperson or a sales manager, you need to pay attention to the importance of both perception and impression and how much that can impact the behavior of both customers and prospective customers. So let's get it out there. I'm actually really biased on this topic. You see, historically, I was not a fan of facial hair for salespeople. So naturally, I went searching for articles and research to support my long-held belief that salespeople need to be clean-shaven. But my research has challenged my long-held beliefs around the need to be clean-shaven for two key reasons that are pretty hard to ignore. In fact, they're as hard to ignore as Brad Pitt's latest beard. First, when you review the research supporting the removal of all facial hair in more detail, the research is pretty questionable and the links to success in sales are very tenuous. And second, the qualities that are attributed to facial hair could arguably be positives for salespeople. So let's see what the research is saying. So what are the arguments for facial hair in sales? So, like any good ex-lawyer, I always like to look for the counter-argument. So I went searching for research that supports the beard. And in 2014, a study in the Journal of Marketing Communications found that when endorsing products, men with well-manicured beards were perceived to be more experienced and more trustworthy. Other research, cited on onlinephd.org, suggests those with beards are perceived as more powerful, more respected, older, and of a higher status. And arguably, all of these perceived qualities could be beneficial to a salesperson in many selling situations. And finally, a study conducted by the official journal of the Human Behaviour and Evolution Society, try saying that, in 2015, and reported in the Huffington Post, indicated that men with beards are perceived to be more attractive, healthier, and more masculine. And they're even perceived to have better parenting skills than their well-shaven competitors. Now, as hard as this is for an old-school salesman to admit, there's strong evidence that the beard is good for sales. But before we throw away the shaver, let's consider the arguments against facial hair in sales. So now that I've shaven, what are the arguments against facial hair in sales? Well, let's start with Reed and Blank's 1990 study, which considered the influence of facial hair on impression formation. Now, its key finding was that clean-shaven men were consistently perceived as more socially and physically attractive, having a better personality, being more competent, and more likely to remain composed in difficult situations. And those are obviously all really crucial qualities to project for those of us in sales. That finding was supported by more recent research in 2003 by D'Souza, Bayo and Otter. And that research suggested that people even preferred to be managed by a clean-shaven manager over a bearded manager. Now, that finding seems a little bit sexist, but that's a topic for a different blog. However, both of these pieces of research related to hiring job applicants for sales jobs rather than buying from a salesperson. Now, another study in 2004 from researchers at Montclair State University in New Jersey asked 371 people to sketch the face of a criminal offender. 82% of the sketches contained some form of facial hair. And in a world that's becoming less and less trusting of anybody trying to sell something, the last thing you want to do is promote the impression that you're a criminal. In January 2013, the Journal of Behavioural Ecology, two researchers, Barnaby Dixon of Victoria University in Wellington, New Zealand, and Paul Vasey of the University of Lethbridge in Alberta, Canada, released a study on reactions to men's beards. In their research, they found that men with beards were viewed as more threatening by both males and females. And surely that's not a quality that any salesperson would want to project. And then there's the Fortune 100 argument, which notes that 98% of Fortune 100 leaders are clean-shaven and that the correlation is a little too high to ignore. But look, I've got a feeling this argument's no longer as relevant because so much of the Fortune 100 is now owned by 30-year-old entrepreneurs with super cool facial hair and sneakers. So that's the evidence against having facial hair. So should you be growing a beard or should you be clean-shaven? Well, I think the research is very clear on the answer, and that is, there is no clear answer to whether beards are good or bad for sales. For my part, I'm still a believer that all salespeople need to be consciously deliberate of the way they groom themselves. And I'm also a believer that the way we prepare ourselves for work each morning is a really important mental primer for success. And I personally find shaving as part of my morning ritual a great reminder that I'm committed to turning up for a great day of selling. But to be clear, there's no science to prove that that extra 5 minutes spent on shaving is going to help me outsell my hipster competitors. And I've got to admit, the world's a really different place to the one that I started working and selling in 30 years ago. Now, I hope you've enjoyed this and would love to hear your thoughts about beard or no beard. And if you've got time, make sure you check out our free sales training videos on the ROI sales methodology at the link provided here.